Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the arts, culture, and history in our region.
Hi, I'm Barb Gravel.
And I'm Bob Danback. On this edition, we'll visit the boyhood home of a famous Minnesota Flyer, enjoy the many musical abilities of a pipe organ, and learn about regional history through music.
Oh, see them drivers travel.
Poetry Out Loud is a competition that encourages students to learn about poetry while they master public speaking skills and build self-confidence. Zachary Howitt of Northern Cass High School was North Dakota's 2017 State Poetry Out Loud champion.
As a sloop with a sweep of immaculate wing on her delicate spine, and a keel as steel as a root that holds in the sea as she leans. I love watching movies, and I love writing. Poetry is very much for everybody to enjoy. It doesn't matter what your background is, you can always find something unique to talk about in poetry. I will take poetry with me into college. My future plans are to attend Minnesota State University Moorhead to major in English writing and film production. I'm really excited to maybe blend poetry with writing with film into this one thing and bring it back to North Dakota so that everybody can enjoy it here.
Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so.
Poetry Out Loud is this competition. It starts in classroom level where kids pick out a poem from this website and they practice and analyze it and rehearse it, and finally they perform it in front of their classrooms, and then they proceed to the school competition, the school-wide competition, where they pick another one. And then the winners from that competition go to the state competition, and they pick a third one, which they are able to perform if they make it to finals. You're encouraged to pick poems that show range. If it's a poem that you can relate with, that's the best kind of poem that you should pick. Something that you can really internalize, and it becomes part of you when you start reciting it. At the state competition, you need one poem that's less than 25 lines, and you also need another poem that precedes the 20th century. The criteria the judges have to decide who wins is physical presence, voice and articulation, appropriateness of dramatization, accuracy, and overall performance. So you have to have this blend of evoking enough emotion, but not too much emotion where it overshadows the meaning of the poem. It's not about the person who recites the poem, it's about the poem itself. You are just the vehicle through which the audience hears and experiences the poem. As a sloop with a sweep of immaculate wing on her delicate spine, and a keel as steel as a root that holds in the sea as she leans. Leaning and laughing, my warm-hearted beauty, you ride. You ride. Overall, it's just kind of nerve-wracking. When I'm sitting there waiting to do my poem, and the person before me has gone up and gone back down, and I'm waiting for the judges to get done judging, I'm kind of just slowly breathing to myself, this will be great. But once you get up there, something happens, something just switches. You feel like you're part of something. I love reciting poetry, and I was just trying to enjoy the sound of the words as I was saying them.
And now it is with great pleasure that I announce the 2017 Poetry Out Loud State Champion, Zach Howitt from Northern Cass. Congratulations.
It felt great to finally get this first place. The past 3 years, I went to the state competition, and I got second the first 2 times. Once it got to this year, I was like, okay, this is it. I can do it. And so it was my final year to just be up there on the stage. I love being in front of an audience reciting poetry, but to finally win, that was really exciting and it really invigorated me. All this hard work, it's paid off in the end. I am wondering, what became of all those tall abstractions that used to pose, robed and statuesque in paintings, and parade about on the pages of the Renaissance, displaying their capital letters like license plates. Poetry Out Loud is just a wonderful experience overall, and I feel so much more strengthened in my abilities to speak and to understand poetry, and also to get in front of people and to share emotions and to have this community of thought and of experience. And so Poetry Out Loud has taught me you can be from any background, but you can still show what you know into poetry. My poem is Holy Sonnets, Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. It's about this poet who's kind of sticking it up to this abstraction of death, saying, you're not as powerful as you think you are. I'm better than death. You are not powerful, because after we die, we're raised to eternal life. And I just love that in his voice. Holy Sonnets, Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow, and soonest our best men with thee do go. Rest of their bones and souls' delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy your charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. Why swell'st thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die.
Trinity Lutheran Church in Moorhead, Minnesota is home to a pipe organ that has been a special part of the church since its installation in 1957. This magnificent instrument boasts a total of 2,500 pipes and has the ability to incorporate sounds of many other instruments. Andrew Steinberg takes us on a tour of this mighty instrument and shares his personal passion for its history.
My name is Andrew Steinberg, and I'm the organist at Trinity Luthern Church, and I'm the chapel organist at Concordia College, both in Moorhead, Minnesota. Having large instruments in really large churches help to lead singing, which is really their main function in the beginning, was to just help people sing and unify singing in church services. Pipe organs, when they first became popular in churches, were really the most advanced thing around, and they were made large because it was easy to make the mechanics work. And then they found out, wow, we can make a lot more noise, so let's make bigger pipes and bigger instruments, and as long as you can supply enough air to a large enough pipe, you can make a really, really big sound. It's so much fun to play the organ at Trinity because of the presence that it brings into the space. It's a really tall and long building, and there's so much room for all of the great sounds to fill up the room. And it was really exciting as a student when I was still kind of getting my feet about me with the organ to get to play, and just the power that comes with playing the organ. Originally, when the organ was put in, there was a big movement throughout the United States to go back to original looking and sounding instruments, and they just developed that even farther. The console, which is all rosewood, is probably one of the most fun features to watch for organists and non-organists alike, because that's where all of the action happens. There's lots of moving of the hands with the multiple keyboards, which are called manuals, and of course playing with your feet. In the center manual, which is called the grate, there are grooves in the middle set of keys from the years of being played on, and it's really kind of exciting to kind of have my fingers fall into those grooves and feel connected to the decades and decades of players that have been at that instrument. Each of the three keyboards own a section of the organ. So the grate, which is the middle keyboard, has its own set of pipes in the right bank on the wall. The swell has that upper left section, and then the positive has the section hanging off of the balcony. So individually, it's like having 3 instruments in one, and they can all be independent from each other and play by themselves, and they all have families of sounds that belong just to them. And then what happens is when I want to make them all play together, I can put down some more of those stop tabs, and it will couple the sounds so that I can play on one keyboard and control sounds from any of the 3 at one time. But I can have all of it together just by hitting a switch. So on the organ, the sounds are grouped into families, and we have principal sounds, flute sounds, reed sounds, and string sounds. When someone says, "Hey, I heard an organ," you will probably think of what are the principal sounds. And those are normally the big metal pipes that you could easily see which are in the pedal. Those belong to the principal family. Flute pipes can be both metal and wood, and they're a little more softer and a little more subtle of sound than the principal sound. The string sounds are unique hybrid pipes that are meant to sound more like strings from an orchestra, violins, violas, cellos, and so they bring a thinner, stringy quality for more lush moments. And then you have the reeds, which can range from very hushed sounding reeds all the way to really bombastic trumpet and trombone sounds. The pipe organ doesn't naturally crescendo or decrescendo. When you hit a key, it opens a valve and it lets air through the pipe, so it's a constant volume for that pipe. So the swell shutter pedal, which is controlled by the feet, and it's right above the pedal board where I play the notes with my feet, and as I push the pedal forward, the swell shutters will open, and as I slowly push it closed, the swell shutters will close. And so it's connected by electric wire from my foot all the way up to the top of the swell box to open and close the shutters. So the stop tabs on the organ each tell me what family and what the size of the pipe is. So there's 8-foot flutes and 16-foot flutes and 4-foot reeds. And so I know what to turn on for what sound that I want. And the more of those that I have down, the louder the sound is going to be, because the more pipes I have playing together. And the fewer is when you get the purity of an individual sound. And so the organ has these great big chests that fill with air, and they're waiting for me to press these notes. And then they activate, and as I hit the keys, all of these things open up, and it just lets this air rush out into the pipes.
At the Charles A. Lindbergh Historic Site, visitors learn more about the man known as Lucky Lindy at his boyhood home in Little Falls, Minnesota. Although Lindbergh was an intensely private person, he shared many personal stories with curators, how his early life on a farm led to his career as a flyer and, surprisingly, as an inventor.
He was so large, so big. His flight came along right at the time with the film industry and radio. That's all you saw was that public face. And he was such a private person that you wouldn't have heard about his farm life unless you knew him from here in Little Falls. This is where Charles developed his ideas. This is where he saw his first airplane and was reading all those stories during the First World War about fighter pilots. And it's really where he developed his creative mechanical abilities, tinkering with the tractor and figuring out puzzles to make the farm running easier. Charles Lindbergh left the farm in 1920, went off to Madison, Wisconsin to be an engineering student. Lasted only 3 semesters. He left before he could flunk out, didn't really apply himself to his studies. After that, he convinced his father to help him enroll as an aviation student down in Nebraska, learned how to fly, spent a couple years as a barnstormer where he really refined his skills.
Barnstormers, gypsy flyers, flying fools.
Started off as a mechanic for the barnstorming company and traded off his mechanical abilities for more flying lessons. Really honed in his skills when he joined the Army Flight School in the mid-20s. It was really there that he learned to apply himself as a student. Out of the 120 some odd students at the beginning of his course, only a dozen were left by the end, and he was number one in his class. After the Army, he was hired as the chief pilot for Robertson Aircraft Company, which had just received the contract for the St. Louis, Missouri to Chicago, Illinois airmail route. And so that's what he spent the next year doing, is flying the airmail. And he had to fly through storms and snow and light and dark, and just really tested his limits as a pilot. About 1926, Lindbergh had learned that a gentleman in New York was offering $25,000 for the first person or crew of people who could fly an airplane nonstop between New York City and Paris, France. Lindbergh's main philosophy for the flight was having enough gasoline to go the distance. And so it all came down to the issue of weight and balancing the science of flight with the actual supplies that you need to make it. He rounded up a group of St. Louis businessmen who were interested in aviation, and they agreed to build him an airplane. Charles left New York, Roosevelt Field, on the morning of May 20th, 1927, just before 8 o'clock. Not ideal conditions. It had been raining for about the past week. The runway was made out of dirt, so it was very soggy and very challenging, and he just cleared the telephone lines at the end of the runway by about 20 feet.
3,600 miles to Paris.
Once he left North Canada, Newfoundland coastline, nobody had heard from him. He didn't have a radio over the ocean. The technology wasn't advanced enough to be able to carry a signal that far.
Over Nova Scotia, rain lashed the wings, seeped into the cockpit. The wind took the plane in its teeth and shook it as a dog shakes a rabbit.
He had carefully mapped out his route using a system called Dead Reckoning, which is a navigation system before GPS, and he had to rely on a sense of timing as well as his compass and carefully make those turns and adjustments each hour to stay on course. But even with all of his detours around the storms, miraculously he was only 3 miles off course when he hit the coast of Ireland. Worked his way down the England coast and landed in Paris after 33 and a half hours in the air. He was an instant celebrity. After the flight, he was hired by the Guggenheim Foundation to do a goodwill tour of the United States. Flew in with the spirit of St. Louis, gave a speech, and just helped really promote that aviation was something that was safe. It was something that we needed as a nation. And he helped scout out locations for airports and what kind of technology needed to be at those airports, and really helped establish our system as we know it today. He also did some dabbling in science, working with Dr. Elisa Korenne in the early 30s. Charles really looked at the human body as a machine. And if you could replace a bad part on a tractor, why can't you replace a bad part in a human being? And so he started talking with Korenne about organ transplant and where that was, and really helped them redesign the perfusion pump, which is a device to help keep organs alive outside of the human body, which is that first step needed in order to have a heart transplant. In 1927, after Lindbergh made his famous flight, there was a big rally in the community to preserve this house. The family donated the 110-acre farm with the house to the state of Minnesota in 1931 for that purpose. In 1954, after his mother's death, Charles went through all of her possessions and started sorting things out. Anything that pertained to here on the farm in Minnesota came to the Minnesota Historical Society. And so when you walk through the house today, it looks very much like it did in the 19-teens. Just that feel of walking into the past and what Charles's life must have been like as a youth.
Singer-songwriter Elisa Korenne writes songs about unusual characters in Minnesota history. One song tells the story of Dorothy Molter's legacy, which grew from the homemade root beer she provided tourists near Knife River.
I live in the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota. I live the life I want and I wouldn't change it one iota. Lived here most of my life, here on a lake called Knife. I live here mostly happy, mostly alone. I'm a strong, strong woman in my wilderness home. And I'm all about root beer, root beer, root beer, root beer. Huh. Winter freezes the lake to ice. I cut the ice from the lake with a knife. Stack the ice in the ice house in huge ice mounds. Each cube weighs over 100 pounds. Cover the ice with sawdust. I cover the sawdust with moss. People come and help me, but I'm the boss of my root beer. Root beer. Root beer. Root beer. Huh. I carry hundreds of glass bottles over hundreds of miles of trail. I wash hundreds of root beer bottles in Knife Lake with a brush and pail. I draw gallons of lake water to pour in vats of root beer mix. I pour root beer in root beer bottles for canoeists on their summer kicks. I sell them root beer, root beer, root beer, root beer. Huh. When the law says I gotta move, 'cause my home's now a park, I fight the law and I stand my mark. But when I don't win the fight, my friends stand up to the government's might. Now I can live here all of my years, I just can't sell any root beer, but I still need the money. So if you'd like to pull up a chair, the donation jar's just over there. Some folks try and find me, some come accidentally, but they are all covered with sweat and they'll drink anything they can get. 2 root beers per customer, 20 minutes or less. Why I have those rules, I bet you can guess. There won't be enough root beer, root beer, root beer, root beer. Huh.
Pop Wagner hails from St. Paul, Minnesota, and has become well known as a country singer and fiddler. Joined by fellow cowboy Bob Bovee, the two perform some old-style country western tunes.
Hear that train a-comin', boy, she's making time. Good old train wearing out that rail, rail, rail. Heading for the mountain that she's gonna climb, bringing in the Georgia mail. 90 miles an hour and she's gaining speed. Listen to that whistle moaning, wail, wail, wail. Has she got the power? Oh, she is indeed. Bringing in the Georgia mail. Oh, see them drivers travel, watch them spin the track. You ought to put that engineer in jail, jail, jail. Has he got her moving? Watch her ball of jack, bringing in the Georgia mail.
Rocking and a reeling, spouting over the steam. Stoke the fire and hope the brakes don't fail, fail, fail. Curb before the depot, listen to her scream, bringing in the Georgia mail.
Hear that train a-comin', boy, she's making time. Good old train wearing out that rail, rail, rail. Heading for the mountain that she's gonna climb. Bringing in the Georgia mail. Bringing in the Georgia mail.
If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make for an interesting segment, please contact us at Prairie Mosaic at prairiepublic.org. I'm Barb Gravel.
And I'm Bob Danback. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.